Good morning, Bucknutters. Welcome to the Bucknuts Morning 5 here on Monday, July 21st, 2025. I am Dave Biddle. I'll be joined by Tim May in just a moment. Yes, the legendary Ohio State beat writer, podcaster, Tim May, joining me on today's show to talk about this 2025 Buckeye team. Also, what brought Tim to Columbus originally? Because he's been covering Ohio State football. You know, he started covering Ohio State football in 1984 for the Columbus Dispatch. But he came to Columbus in 76 to first work for the Dispatch. So what brought him here in our nation's bicentennial, was the end game always to cover Ohio State football? Is that what really brought him to Columbus, even though he didn't get officially on the beat till 84? Just can't wait to talk to my man, Tim May. We have media days kickoff tomorrow. All of Ohio State stuff is tomorrow in Vegas. So a lot of stuff to get into with Tim. And we're going to hear from him in just a moment. Before we do that, I'm going to let you guys know about our friends over at Factor Meals and a great deal you guys can get. You guys know I love Factor Meals. Summer is still in full swing. Still a lot of sunlight out there. You want to be outside. You want to do all the things that make summer special. Okay, so one of those things is not spending a bunch of hours inside cooking, cleaning up, prepping, and all that stuff. That's where Factor comes in. Factor's chef-crafted, dietitian-approved meals are ready in just 2 minutes. Takes the hassle out of eating well. I told you guys the story. My side hustle, as the kids say, do some radio here in Columbus and for the Fan. And one of my buddies who works there, he was always making those old school microwave meals. I finally turned them on to Factor. Bam, no more frozen old school microwave meals from the 80s and 90s. Like, these are like fresh, good quality. Again, fresh, never frozen, ready in 2 minutes. Perfect. Get started at factormeals.com/bucknuts50 off. Use code bucknuts50 off to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. That's a fantastic deal. Half off plus free shipping. That's code bucknuts50 off at factormeals.com/bucknuts50 off for 50% off plus free shipping. Factormeals.com/bucknuts50 off. It really is a great deal. You get half off, free shipping. Give it a try if you haven't already. All right, still waiting to hear from Tim. Hopefully he gets in okay. I'm sure he's fine. He's been down the block 1 or 2 times. He'll be good. In fact, we don't even live that far away from each other here in the metropolis of Hilliard. So let's get to it. So tomorrow, some of the main questions for the Buckeyes. Obviously, Coach Day is going to be peppered with questions about the quarterback. Jeremiah Smith is going to be peppered with questions about the quarterback and a bunch of other stuff. I mean, Jeremiah is going to be questioned about a lot of stuff. I'm glad he's going. That's really cool that they're bringing him, because sometimes a coach might shelter a kid that is not very outspoken, although he leads by example. That's for damn sure. He's one of only 3 Buckeyes that was Iron Buckeyes: Saraveld, Sonny Styles, and Jeremiah Smith. But he's also just a sophomore. So it would be like, maybe we're going to leave him back in Columbus, maybe bring a veteran. No, a more seasoned veteran. No, he's the best player in college football. Bring him to media days. I love it. Who's the second best player in college football? Caleb Downs. He's going to media days. And then who's the clear leader, in my opinion, on this team? Sonny Styles. He'll wear that block O. Leadership is a concern of mine. I don't think that this team is void of leadership. I just think that last year's team, I've never seen a Buckeye team. I'm curious to get Tim May's thoughts, presuming we can get Tim to actually hop on. No, I'm sure it'll be fine. I'm curious to get Tim's thoughts on this because, even before, I've been on the beat a long time myself. But Tim says, I'll be on in seconds, I hope. Love him. Tim's my guy. I've been on the beat. I'm the third longest tenured because it's Tim. I still consider Tim on the beat, even though he's half retired, pseudo-retired. Steve Hellwagon, my guy, Bucknuts, and then me. Because Bill Rabinowitz came on after I did, Doug Lair-Maurice. Not much. I think Doug was just like a couple years after I did. But I have the mantle of being third. But Tim's got it by a wide margin for longest tenured. So yeah, we're gonna hear from Tim in a moment. But I've never seen leadership this good for Ohio State. Even going back to my time, I was a Buckeye fan since I was a little kid. Like 1982 is when I fell in love with the Buckeyes. So I've followed this team religiously, but even before I got on the beat. And I don't remember a team with last year's team with that type of leadership across the board. Because you think about like the main guys, right? You think like Jack Sawyer and all these guys and Will Howard, but this just across the board, they had great leadership. Oh, look at this. My day just got better. Tim May joins the show. Good to see you, my friend. Thank you so much for your time.
Nice to be on. I thought I was going to be syncing up through my main computer, but I couldn't get the thing to work right. So is this okay, Dave?
You look great. I'm just glad we have your insights. We can see you. You sound good. Perfect.
Can
Sorry
I
I
put
took
a
a little
cap
bit.
on like you've got?
What's that?
Can I put a cap on like you
Yeah,
do?
yeah. Let's yeah.
That's
Hats
my
off.
Bryson DeChambeau Crusher's cap.
Okay. I like it. I like it a lot. So I was just talking about we're gonna get to a lot of different things. I was just talking about the leadership on last year's team. Like I've never seen anything like it. Have you do you remember an Ohio State team that had just that type of leadership just across the
Yeah,
board?
2002, that team had some damn good leadership. I mean, and even in 14, man, the thing that was cool about the 14 team, it was almost a group effort, a leadership standpoint. But so many guys stepped forward, and uh, you've been around teams, you've seen teams like I'm talking about, Dave, where everybody knows they're pretty damn good, on the team, and they don't have to be motivated. That's what 14 was like to me. I don't know if you agree or not, but you had those sophomores that stepped up and did a hell of a job, and Joey Bosa and all those guys. Uh, but yeah, last year, what really stood out about last year was you had all of that, and uh, and then there was a faith element to that team.
Yeah.
We've all been around guys on Ohio State who've had, talk about the Lord and what He means to them and stuff. And some of them you thought were legit. Some of them you thought, well, okay, that sounds good. You know what I mean? You knew things other than what they were, just their public persona. But this was a legit core to this team. I mean, because I think it came to the fore in the worst of times, which was right after the Michigan game when they had the big meeting with Ryan Day, and just when you think it's an NIL transfer portal me society, you had a group of guys, you know, let Ryan Day leave the room. Then they had their own meeting, and then they had a kumbaya moment, and they basically had a circle prayer to end the meeting. In essence, uh, all all pretty much pledging we're going to be better, uh, and they had something to lean on there. And no matter what people think about uh, religion, religion to me and belief are two different things because religions sometimes get into the way of people coming together, but a common belief, as something you can lean on as a rock, I think really helped that team last year. So I think I would agree. I think that leadership on that team, because it had two tough moments that it had to deal with, and some major injuries it had to overcome. But yeah, I think leadership finally came to the fore there. But I've seen good leadership in different ways on quite a few Ohio State teams.
Yeah, they literally had we use this term a lot, a come to Jesus moment. They literally had one of those, and you're right. I
Yeah,
mean,
but see, I don't like to narrow it down just to come to Jesus, because maybe some of them had something else going on, but it's a
true.
belief.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
I'm with you there. Go ahead.
We use that phrase a lot, right?
Yeah.
We had a come to Jesus moment, but everything we've heard about that meeting was like, that's kind of what it was, and then, as you said, it ended in a prayer after they probably yelled at each other for a while.
Yep.
I was talking about this is the thing, this year's team's got good leaders, as you know, Caleb Downs, not that we were in there, maybe you were, I wasn't. Caleb Downs, from everything I heard, was a big vocal part of that meeting. As
Yeah,
a
I wasn't in it
sophomore
either. Yeah,
who had
but
just been there for a few months, so
yeah.
they've got some really good leaders on this team. It's just last year's team was just stacked with it. All right, let's
Wait,
get
wait.
to
Well, let
it.
me say one quick thing.
Yes, sir. Yes,
See,
sir.
I don't remember, but during the spring one time, I asked, I think,
Uh, Frozen up a little bit. We'll
be
get
a
them.
coach one of these days, and just because of the way he carries himself, he knows so much, and then he carries himself and can convey what he knows to other people. And there's just a steady uh, rock, rock of Gibraltar kind of like look to him. That wasn't what I was looking for there,
Is
but
this
you know
Caleb
what I'm
Downs you're
saying.
talking about?
Caleb
Caleb Downs?
Downs,
Yep.
that you could count on this guy to
Yep.
99% of the time do his job, and then he can talk the talk, but he can also walk the walk. And you've been around, man, guys who are good talkers but weren't good walkers. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
You know,
Uh,
and But this guy is the whole shebang, just like Jeremiah Smith in his own way is the whole shebang, man. It's rare.
Yeah, I know I'm not the first or the last person to say this, but it looks like Ohio State has the 2 best players in college football.
Yeah, you got
Jeremiah
to have more than that.
Yeah, and yeah, they got plenty of talent on this year's team. It's just and we'll get to that in a minute. I do want to go back and I love the life that you're living, man. You got to retire. They honored you on the field at Ohio Stadium during a game. It wasn't while the action was being played. It was during a timeout. But seriously, I think that was so cool that you got honored at the stadium. But sports writers, I've always said this: sports writers, with some exceptions, and podcasters, we just don't retire, right? You might retire from a full-time gig, but I love
Yeah.
it, man. Living the life. You're still. You could just retire and do nothing if you wanted to, but that's not what you want to do. You want to kind of be half retired, but still do what you want to do. I love it.
Well, stepped away from. I planned on last year being my last year doing anything, and stepped away from Nutter Monroe definitely after the season was over. What a way to go out, right? And I was thinking, I
Yeah,
remember I got a little emotional when Spencer Holbrook and I did our wrap up there in the Georgia Dome, or whatever it's called, the Mercedes-Benz Dome,
yeah,
um, Mercedes-Benz Stadium, excuse me. But I got a little because I just thought that was going to be it. I mean, I was pretty much. And matter of fact, I thought the previous year I was going to step away, and so I've stepped away from that aspect of things. I quit covering auto racing this year, and I really missed that because I've been to the Indianapolis 500 since 1985, covered every one of them until this year. And in Mid Ohio, I didn't go up there. But my point was, but then I had a couple opportunities come along here over the last several months where, like Clay Hall and I are going to do a show called the Clay and May Report, is what I've named it. Uh,
nice,
Once we get into preseason camp and stuff, I mean, he's a guy who retired, but did he really want to retire? But
right?
what we do, bids. I mean, we're not digging ditches, man. I mean,
No,
I did construction my first summer out of high school, and I go, boy, I got to do something else with my life because I'm not doing this for 45 years till I get
yeah,
to retirement. Um, I mean, we did all kind. I learned how to roof. I learned how to frame. I learned how to put in concrete drives. I almost fell off a uh, scaffolding one time. It scared me to death. I go, I got to do something other than this. And so, yeah, and it's hard. What we do is hard work sometimes. I mean, it's more of is somebody going to call me back, float right down the line. Well, I don't really have that problem anymore. And I can do my Tim May show. I can do like you do. I can do gigs on 97.1 The Fan, which I totally enjoy. I don't
and
know
you
if
and
I
I are
many.
going to be together on the tailgate show
Oh
this year.
yeah,
Anthony Rothman, Tim
yes,
May, and I'm fortunate
and
enough to be
Dave
along
Benz.
for the ride. So yeah, we're going to be.
Yeah.
It's
Oh yeah.
3 hours before every Ohio State game. We're going to be coming at you for 2 hours, and I guess we'll start 3.5 hours before every game. Yeah, we start three
Yeah.
and a half
Well,
hours. Yeah, I'm the rookie. I don't know that when the show starts yet, Tim.
yeah.
But I'm honored.
You're along for the
Right.
ride. You're like the kid that sits in the second row of the school bus and won't shut up. That's what you are. But
I'm just
no, I'm
happy to
looking
be
forward
part
to
of
that.
the team. Yeah,
That's what I'm just saying, Dave. That's what I was going to get to. I have always, my entire life, enjoyed what I call pregame banter on the
yeah,
radio about college football games. I've always enjoyed that.
yeah.
I always wanted to be a part of that. And when I was with the Dispatch, I couldn't really be that. On occasion, I did some things like that. But, I really enjoyed doing those pregame shows. And you and I had a blast at the spring game doing it. And I hope that continues.
Yeah, it's signed, sealed, and delivered. I'm going to be part of the show this year, so I'm fortunate to do that with you guys. All right, so I know you got in the Buckeye beat in 1984. You're the longest tenured. I still consider you part of the beat. I know you're technically,
Oh,
retired,
I
but
still ask questions. I mean, here's
you
the
still
thing.
ask great questions.
Yeah, you got to know what's going on. That's why,
Yeah.
that's why I'm at the press conferences and everything else. You got to know what's going on, or you're faking it.
Or yeah, you're at everything. Your energy is just I'm just always in awe by it. All right, so you got on the beat in '84, but I believe you came to the Dispatch in '76. Do I have that
Right,
right? So
right. I moved up here from
what brought you from? Because I know you grew up an Alabama fan, but you grew up in Texas mostly. What brought you to Columbus?
a Ford Mustang too, one of the worst cars ever built. That's why you will never see Tim May driving around in a Ford ever again because it left me walking 3 times.
Oof.
Uh, But being facetious, I was a sports editor to the Lufkin News back when I turned 19 down in Texas. Lufkin, home of Des Bryant, that's where he's from, and other. They could have filmed Friday Night Lights in Lufkin; it would have been apropos. Um, but the bottom line is, I was sports editor there for 3 years, and my parents had moved to Ohio, and they kept trying to get me to finish college. I got three brothers, and they kept trying me to move up to Ohio and finish college. And finally, I did move up in '76. Took them up on it. Too bad they had to pay out of state tuition for me when I first moved up here.
Oh,
But
okay.
I immediately went to work at the Dispatch as like a part timer, to begin with, because I could write headlines, write stories, do everything, and even take photos if they needed it. And then that quickly turned into a full time job, and was there for 42 years or whatever it was, full time from like '77 on, and till I retired at the end of the 2018 football season, which was my my last story I wrote for the Dispatch. At least on Ohio State football, I was sitting in my favorite spot in the upper parking lot at Pepperdine University, where
Yes.
you look down upon Malibu and the Pacific Ocean. It's one of the coolest views you can find, and I thought I was pretty much done at that point. My first grandson came along that same day on the January the 2nd, 2019, Owen, and I was going to be a grandpa and move on, and but then I got some offers, and several of you.com types came after me, and I got around with Letterman Row and got dragged back into it, and have totally enjoyed it since then too. But I don't have quite as many duties as the old saying goes, which makes it seem like semi-retirement.
You thought you were out.
And you
Pulled
pulled
you
me
back
back in.
in. That's right. All right. So when
Well, we
Ryan
call it
Day,
a business, you call it a game, and we call it a game, you call it a business. Go ahead now.
I mean, people compare Godfather 3 to the first two. That's unfair. Godfather 3 is still a good. People act like that was a bad movie. It's a good movie. It's just
Yeah,
not one of the top 5 movies of all time, like 1 and 2. All right. So
absolutely.
When Ryan Day was first hired, I want you to think
Yes.
back. I remember thinking because we got to know him a little bit during his 2 years as assistant coach. We're talking end of 2018 when we found out he's going to be the head coach. They had that press conference, which was really weird. It was Gene, it was Urban, and Ryan Day.
Oh,
I've never
yeah.
seen anything like that. And Ryan handled himself well. I already knew Ryan enough. I don't think I knew him that well to know he was a good guy, and I wanted this to work. But I admit, and I've said this before, I had a little bit of trepidation because they didn't even bring in anybody else to interview. It was just like Gene Smith didn't even conduct interviews. He knew Ryan Day was the guy, so I give Gene credit for that. And I even asked the first question at the press conference. I said,
Yeah.
"Bring anybody in for interviews? Did you just feel like you had your guy and that was why?" And he said, "Yes." He basically gave a good answer. But I will admit, because he had never been a head coach before, this is not Bowling Green. We root for Bowling Green, especially with Eddie there. My sister went there. So nothing against Bowling Green. This is Ohio State, though. So rookie head coach, didn't interview anybody else. I was like, geez, I hope this works, but I wasn't sure, Tim. It worked. What were you thinking?
I was thinking, boy, this is a great hire. I literally was thinking that. Told Ryan that, told Gene Smith that. Urban gave me a bunch of grief because, I had announced I was retiring. Remember, that was after that
Oh,
Michigan
yeah.
game where I got that little football and stuff, which was so cool. Uh, and but I was retiring, and but I just remembered the first time I ever met Ryan Day. I liked it, man.
Yes.
I wasn't gonna say
Yes.
love at first sight because that sounds a little bit iffy, but I really liked him. I liked what he brought to the offense. Kind of like when Walt Harris showed up. Remember in the mid
Yes.
'90s, what he
95.
brought to the offense. I just liked what the mesh play, or as I called it, the crisscross. Remember, made his debut against Indiana that year in 17, and then of course Ryan, I thought did a great job in those 3 games when he had. I mean, this wasn't a Jim Harbaugh suspension of Urban Meyer. It was what Sharon Moore is going to get, where when Urban Meyer, remember, missed all of preseason camp plus the first 3 games. I thought you saw Ryan grow every week, almost every day when we were around him uh, as the head coach. Because they could have named Kevin Wilson or who else was on that
Shiano?
squad?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Shiano. Yes. Yep.
Shiano. They had been
Yeah.
head coaches, and instead, they made Ryan the guy, which means they are. And I thought he proved a lot. I don't know if you agree. I thought he proved a lot. A lot of main thing he proved is poise. When they went down and played that game against TCU in Jerry World or AT&T Stadium, that was a big moment. I mean, people can say what they want now, but and they handled TCU, but that was a first road trip, and without Urban Meyer around, and Urban wasn't allowed to be in the facility. You know what I'm talking about, and
Yeah.
uh, so he'd already impressed me. It was kind of like Dwayne Haskins Jr. going in the second half against Michigan in 17. Kind of the same thing. you know,
Yeah.
that was really even Jim Burrow, Joe Burrow's dad. We've talked about that before because I've had him on my podcast quite a bit several years ago, and we talked about that was the one thing Joe didn't have on his resume, rescuing the Michigan game. And Dwayne Haskins Jr. did, and so uh, Ryan had already dealt with that. That challenge of who's going to be your starter between those two guys, both of whom turned out to be superstars. Uh, Dwayne before Joe, if you remember correctly, because
For
Joe
sure.
wasn't that great in 18 at LSU, but he was in 19. But anyway, I digress. I thought he and then the first year, all it did was back up my belief. In 19, we all know they got robbed against Clemson. They were robbed
Hmm.
twice really in that game. I mean, first Deshaun, what was his name? Sean Wade getting knocked out of the game for when Pretty Boy ducked his head, and all of a sudden it was Sean Wade's fault. And then of course the Jeffrey Okuda strip and Jordan Fuller scoop and score. I I still would like a full investigation of what was up with that reversal.
For that to be a
But yeah,
touchdown on the field and then them to reverse it, I still remember the replay official's name, Gerald Hodges, and I've always said he either is the most incompetent person ever at his job or
yes,
was on the take. It's one of the
It
2.
was what it was one of the two. It couldn't have been he was competent because he wasn't.
Right.
But anyway, hey, real quick though, but moving past that, but what you always wondered about Ryan, who would he hire? Hiring is the biggest thing you do as a head coach. Not recruiting. I mean, recruiting is obviously you win with people. Woody Hayes said that. Nobody's going. But I'm talking about what really finally defines you is who you hire, because finally you have to become a head coach fully, which is what Ryan did last year. Finally, right? But when he went out and got Madison uh, and Washington Jr. from uh, uh, from Michigan, that was big, right? And Greg Madison, and then he, then when you turn around and he hired Kerry Combs back, that was ends up being not a great hire as far as defensive coordinator goes. He learned from that and ends up with Jim Knowles, and then Jim Knowles was, that was on the fence a little bit to begin with, but then boy did he deliver. But I think what we've seen him do is mature as a head coach. I'm talking about Ryan Day, and it came to the fore last year. And I'm going back to that meeting. As I told him, I did a little interview with him in his uh, office, like I said, back in March. And I even told him, I mean, that was that moment of truth for a head coach. Do you put your foot down and go, not admit any guilt and just go, we got to play harder, we got to play better? Or do you do a mea culpa? Do you take uh, some blame for what happened in that Michigan game, and then what do you do from there? He turned it over to his players, to, as you pointed out, great leadership on that team, a great group of players and guys who are really confident in their own abilities. Because finally, this, Bids, players are the ones who decide how good you're going to be. And I'm not talking about how good they are, but how good you're going to be as a team. And I think Ryan understands that, and he embraced that. It was the opposite of what John Voight did in Varsity Blues. Remember, he got run out of the locker room, never to
Yeah.
be seen again. And Ryan Day did just the opposite. He let the players, in essence, take ownership of their team.
Absolutely. I'll get you out of here on this. This is we with media days being tomorrow, let's go over some like some of the biggest questions you have. Offense, defense, 2 new coordinators taking over. Brian Hartline
Yeah.
was the offensive coordinator name a couple years ago, but he's really going to be the OC this year, calling the plays. Matt Patricia taking over the defense. What are your thoughts about the quarterback position? Or do you think it'll be Sayin, or you think this is a good battle? And just your thoughts on the coordinator, the 2 new coordinators.
When you just think about the quarterback position, you think about Julian saying how good he was in the Elite 11 and all that kind of stuff. But then, you get I mean, I didn't go to the game, but I watched video of the softball game uh, on Saturday.
Yeah.
Lincoln Keenholz, as I said on the radio this morning, or that show that Tito does. I'm doing that for a couple of days for Carpenter, filling in, and Bobby Carpenter,
Morning
and
juice.
huh?
Morning juice, right?
Yeah, Morning Juice,
Yeah.
and it was actually pretty much a lot of fun, because all it is talking. But um, Lincoln Keenholz, when he showed up, he was this 4 sport star, Gatorade Athlete of the Year, for the nation. But he was what, 6'1", 6'2", 185 pounds or something. Now, you could see from one softball game to the next how much muscle he's put on, his technique and everything. But now he was hitting home runs out of the entire ballpark in home run derby, I guess, or in warm-ups. So he has really stepped up his game. I think you agree with me. When we got to watch some practices in the spring, he stood out to me more than Julian saying. It's just that when the bright lights really came on in the spring game, it was Julian Sayin who had the hot start, and after he got going, Lincoln played pretty well. But I think it's up for grabs. I don't know if you agree. So I think the quarterback position, new offensive coordinator Brian Hartline is going to be part and parcel to that. But we all know the head coach makes the final call on starting quarterback without a doubt. So I think once they get that question answered, him, who knows, it may not even be the first week, right? It may be later on. And then defensively, Matt Patricia, every time I have any interaction with him or hear of other interactions with him, he's a very intelligent, smart guy who understands the matchups in the game. That's where this defense is going to go to another level than it reached last year with Jim Knowles. Is Matt Patricia understands how the NFL does things defensively. And okay, you can use a more depth at defensive tackle. Well, maybe you roll some defensive ends in there in all kinds of ways. Whatever it takes to get your best players on the field. He is definitely that guy, and I am very intrigued by what he's going to bring.
I'm very intrigued that we were able to have the legend, Mr. Tim May, on the show. I know you
Are
don't
we
like
done?
I mean, I can ask you like a couple more things if you want me to.
Okay. Okay.
All right, good,
Unless
good.
you
I
unless you
thought
don't want to.
I thought maybe I was going like a little too long for you. All right,
No,
so
I'm
more on Patricia. You and I have talked about this on the fan. I, I think for a variety of reasons, we're going to see a lot more odd fronts this year because they don't like their depth at D tackle. I think they like their starters, projected starters with Caden
oh
McDonald and
yeah.
Ed Houston, and maybe Will Smith
Yeah.
Jr. can step up. But I don't think they like their depth there. I think they do like their depth at defensive end and outside linebacker. So I think and Patricia, he walks the walk when it comes to like every coach says I'm going to adjust this, the scheme to the strength of my players, but he does that. He did that with the Patriots, but he did a lot of 3-4. So I expect more odd fronts this year from Patricia. Get into that if you
Yeah.
would.
Yeah. I just they're like I said, there's all kinds of rob Peter to pay Paul, but what you're looking for, you don't remember this. I did a story with Joey Bosa one time on I thought he would have been a great in college, would have been a great 3 technique because he was a matchup nightmare when they moved him down sometimes in that Wall Street look. And I think a Kenyatta Jackson could do that kind of thing. Bo Atkinson, the kid they got from North Carolina, looks to me like he could be that kind of guy that all of a sudden, wait, what's he doing at 3 tech? What's he doing? Hey, what's he doing at the nose? You know what I mean? I'm talking about not necessarily going against Notre Dame in a power football situation or Michigan, but they can do all kinds of mixes and matches, and and sometimes you can have an odd front and not even line up that way if you follow what I'm saying. And I think Patricia is really good. I don't call anybody a genius anymore because a lot of these guys steal from others. You know what I mean? That's just the way the game is played. But I think he has all kinds of ways. I'm really curious on how he's going to get 3 linebackers on the field more than maybe you think he's going to this year. Because Peyton Pierce, he showed in the spring he's got to play, man. And then Sonny Styles, and of course Arvell Reese is Arvell Reese is a defensive end masquerading as a linebacker. The guy's it's crazy. Body by Marotti, it's crazy what that young man has grown into and stuff. And then Riley Pettijohn, who I expect year goes on, I think he's going to the freshman. I think he's going to rise more and more into because he showed a lot of flash to me. Then what do you do with C.J. Hicks, right? Who moved down to edge? You got to get him on the field, or you're wasting a talent there. He is not the consummate defensive end, nor is he a consummate linebacker. But by golly, tell him to go rush a quarterback,
Yeah,
right? Or go disrupt things, CJ. He can do that. So there are all kinds of in that front seven or front six, wherever he ends up playing, that I think he could. I think he's relishing getting after Texas and their new starting quarterback, uh, Arch Manning, and because they're going to have to lean on their defense a little bit in this opener. I think you agree with that, right?
for sure, for sure. And it's so the whole thing is just loaded with intrigue. They just played a classic game in the college football playoff semifinal. They're
Yeah,
leading off the next season against each other. 20 years exactly after they last had a home and home, which was a great game in '05, even though it didn't end well for Ohio State. But then Ohio State went and returned the favor in '06. And beyond all that, they're the co-betting favorites, depending on where you look, to win the national championship this year. It's
yeah.
the storybook. All right, we'll get you out of here on this. I mean, this is going to be a tough one. I'm sure you've been asked this before. I've never heard the answer, though. This is from loyal listener Mika. She asks, what is the favorite moment of your career, Tim, so far? I love how she puts so far in there. So far. What's your favorite moment of your career? Do you have a favorite moment? Buster Douglas,
Uh,
maybe? Because you called it.
yeah, you're talking about career, not just Ohio State football. Yeah.
Favorite moment of your
Uh,
career. You covered it and you
I,
predicted it.
I've got three that I've really liked. Number one, getting to cover Buster Douglas in Tokyo when he beat Tyson, and I actually wrote a column the day of. If he stays away from the uppercut, he could beat Tyson. Eighth round, here comes the uppercut by Tyson, but Buster got up at the count of eight. It was a slow eight, but it was an eight. You know,
Yes.
uh, but yeah, and that was just unbelievable in the Tokyo Dome. Everything it meant. Current President Donald Trump was there because they were going to host the Tyson Holyfield fight, and they had to put that on hold because it didn't happen. That was a once in a life. As I've told Buster many times, yeah, what happened after that fight, you and your career, you know, that's what happens, right? But nobody can ever take away the greatest upset in boxing, maybe even in sports history. Uh, Number two, I was sitting in the pits the last 25 laps of the Indianapolis 500 in 1986. I was sitting down along the pit wall with Jim Truman, the team owner of True Sports, who was dying of cancer, would die 11 days later when Bobby Rahal makes that pass on Kevin Cogan on a restart with 2 laps left and runs off and wins the Indianapolis 500. That hair raised just on the back of my neck just now, recalling that. And then call, you know, 2002, the national championship game, when everybody thought the game was over, and it wasn't over. Uh, I remember Dan Fouts. I saw him at Indianapolis. He was there. They were honoring NFL Hall of Fame at one point, and I walked up to him and I said, "By the way,
Oh no, he's cutting out on us a little bit. It's not his fault. He's getting
dude," he
something.
goes, "He does." Yeah, he does. I go, "Yeah." You want to
Say
hear
that
it? He goes, "Yeah." I said,
you
"Yeah."
cut out a little. Start that story right when you started to get excited about what you were going to say. Start over just about 10 seconds ago.
Yeah, Dan Fouts. And I said, "Yeah, my son does a great imitation." He goes, "Yeah, you want to hear it?" He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "Bad call." and uh, and I said, it was at the least. I told him it was at the least defensive holding, which would have still given him a first down at the one
Right.
yard line there. And so, uh, but those are my three, man. That really just, there's been a million of them, right? Bids. I mean, but
Yes.
the Lufkin Longview game in 1974 in Lufkin's Stadium, Abe Martin Stadium in Lufkin, Texas, 10,500 people there, plus five 5. There, I can count to 5. 5 Southwest Conference head coaches in the press box. That's how much talent was on the field and how much interest there was. What a ball game, 7-0. Longview wins. But yeah, I've seen a lot of stuff, man.
Yes, you have. You are, man, this has been such a treat. This has been such a treat. Thank you, sir. I appreciate your time. He is Tim May. You guys know him and love him. People are thrilled that you were able to do the show, and I'm thrilled as well. Thank you so much for your time.
Let's do it again if you have any time, man. I'm looking forward to it.
I would love it. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it so much. He is the legend, Tim May. What a treat that was. Thank you so much to Tim. He was just doing a show this morning, as he was saying, over at 97.1, like in the studio, drove back and immediately did the Bucknuts Morning 5 with me. Absolute legend, great guy. And all of us that are in this business, in this industry, I don't want to speak for everybody, but I know I've talked to a lot of my friends that are in the industry. We all look up to Tim. I mean, Tim is like, he's a pillar of this institution, and happy to call him a friend, and thrilled that he was able to join us for the show, and really appreciate his time. So thanks to Tim. Thanks to all of you. Appreciate it very much. Hope everyone has a great rest of your day. Go Bucks. Still basking.